They threw Coca-Cola on the waitress for fun, their laughter echoing through the ballroom as she stood there soaked and shaking. Just another nobody in a black uniform they could humiliate without consequences. What they didn't know, her husband was Dante Valenti, the man who controlled every brick, every permit, every construction dollar in the city. And he'd just received the video of what they did to his wife. Scarlett Thorne had been on her feet for 7 hours straight. The Grand Regency ballroom glittered like a jewelry box, crystal chandeliers throwing fractured light across marble floors, champagne towers catching gold reflections, Manhattan's wealthiest spinning in designer gowns worth more than her yearly salary. Scarlett moved through it all like smoke, refilling glasses, clearing plates, functionally invisible to people whose vacation homes cost more than her entire neighborhood. She didn't mind being invisible. Honestly, she preferred it. More champagne, table 12. Her manager's voice cut through the orchestra music, sharp and impatient. And clear table 9, now. Scarlett nodded, balancing a tray of crystal flutes as she navigated between silk dresses and Italian leather shoes. Her feet ached, her lower back burned, but she smiled anyway, the professional smile she'd perfected over 5 years of luxury service work. Table 12 was trouble. She'd known it since cocktail hour. 2 men in their mid-20s, drunk since the event began, celebrating something called the Sterling Carter merger expansion. Their laughter had teeth in it, the kind that came from people who'd never faced a single consequence in their lives. "Finally," one of them drawled as Scarlett approached. His name tag read, Vance Sterling. Sandy hair perfectly styled, a smile that belonged on a yacht advertisement. Cufflinks that probably cost more than her car payment. "Thought we'd die of thirst over here." Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories alive, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. "My apologies, sir." Scarlett kept her voice even, neutral, trained. She'd learned years ago that reacting only made things worse. As she poured, Vance elbowed his friend, Brooks Carter, dark-haired, equally polished, equally drunk, and grabbed his phone. They scrolled through something that made them both snicker. Scarlett caught a glimpse. Photos of themselves posing with bottles, making obscene gestures, rich boys playing rebellion. "Scarlett, right?" Vance squinted at her name tag, tilting his head like she was a curiosity. "That's pretty. You got a boyfriend, Scarlett?" "I'm married, sir." "Married?" Brooks clutched his chest in mock devastation. "Damn! Lucky guy. What's he do? Let me guess. Works at a Starbucks? Drives for DoorDash?" Scarlett's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "He works in construction." This sent them into hysterics. "Construction!" Vance slapped the table. "So he's got a beer gut and a pickup truck with bumper stickers. Classic." Scarlett said nothing. The champagne bottle was empty. She should leave. She needed to leave. Wait. Vance stood, swaying slightly. The ballroom was loud enough that no one else was paying attention. "I have a question." "Vance, sit down," Brooks muttered, but he was grinning, phone raised, camera pointed. "I'm genuinely curious," Vance continued, louder now. A few nearby guests glanced over. "When you go home tonight, are you going to tell your construction worker husband about this? About how you spent your whole night serving people who'll never even remember your name?" Scarlett's heart hammered against her ribs. "Have a good evening, gentlemen." She turned to leave. "Hey, I'm talking to you." What happened next lasted maybe 4 seconds, but Scarlett would replay it for the rest of her life in excruciating slow motion. Vance grabbed a glass bottle of Coca-Cola from the table, one of the sodas they'd ordered to mix with rum, stepped forward, and while Brooks recorded and their friends erupted in howling laughter, he tipped the entire bottle over Scarlett's head. The liquid was shockingly cold. It cascaded down her face, her neck, soaking through her black uniform shirt. Ice cubes bounced off her shoulders and skittered across the polished floor. Carbonation fizzed in her ears. The nearby tables went silent. Women gasped. Men stared. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Scarlett stood frozen. Coca-Cola dripping from her hair, her eyelashes, her trembling chin. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The humiliation was a living thing, crushing her lungs, making the chandeliers blur, turning the floor beneath her feet into quicksand. Brooks and Vance were dying laughing, doubled over, slapping each other. "Did you get that?" "Oh, dude, I got everything. This is going in the group chat immediately." "What is going on here?" The manager appeared, face flushed, eyes darting between Scarlett and the Sterling Carter table. He took one look at Vance's smirking face, at the family name on his badge, and his expression transformed. Fear. "She was rude to our guests," Vance said casually, dropping back into his chair like nothing happened. "Just teaching some manners." The manager grabbed Scarlett's arm, gripped tight enough to bruise. "I am so sorry, Mr. Sterling." "Scarlett, break room." "Now." "But I didn't." "Now." Scarlett stumbled away, past the staring faces, past the whispers. Her shoes squelched with each step. A woman in diamonds looked away, uncomfortable, but silent. An older gentleman frowned, but said nothing. No one helped. No one defended her. No one stopped them. In the staff bathroom, Scarlett locked the door and stared at her reflection. Coca-Cola matted her dark hair into sticky clumps. Mascara ran in black streaks down her cheeks. The shirt she'd ironed so carefully that morning was ruined, clinging to her skin like evidence. She didn't cry. She'd learned years ago that crying changed nothing. Her phone buzzed on the sink, a text from Dante. "How's work, amor?" Scarlett stared at the message. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling. She could tell him, she could tell Dante everything. About Vance, about Brooks, about the laughter and the ice cubes and the way the entire ballroom watched her humiliation like it was dinner theater. But then what? People like the Sterlings and Carters didn't face consequences. They owned buildings like this. They owned managers and politicians and probably half the city's law firms. If she complained, she'd be fired, blacklisted. If Dante complained, he'd look insane. A construction guy going after billionaire families. No, better to stay quiet, better to survive. She typed back, "Fine, home by midnight. Love you." She shoved the ruined shirt into a trash bag, changed into her backup uniform, and returned to the ballroom with her head down and her smile back in place. What Scarlett didn't know, what none of them knew, was that a young kitchen worker named Felix had watched the entire thing. Felix, who'd always been kind to Scarlett, who brought her coffee during double shifts. Felix, who was furious enough to do something stupid. Felix, who knew exactly who Scarlett was married to. And by dawn, a crystal-clear video of Vance Sterling pouring Coca-Cola on a waitress would be sitting on the desk of Dante Valenti, the man who controlled every cement delivery, every steel shipment, every building permit, every union contract in New York City. The man who built the city's foundations. The man whose wife had just been humiliated in front of Manhattan's wealthiest elite. But that night, as Scarlett rode the subway home with damp hair and an aching smile, she had no idea that within 7 days, the Sterling and Carter families would learn something their money couldn't buy them. You don't humiliate a queen just because she's wearing an apron. Vincent Rossi had worked for Dante Valenti for 12 years. In that time, he'd delivered plenty of bad news. Labor disputes, permit delays, occasionally, threats from competitors who didn't understand how things worked in this city. He'd learned to keep his expression neutral, his voice measured. But this morning, driving through pre-dawn Manhattan with his phone burning a hole in his jacket pocket, his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The video had arrived at 5:52 a.m. Unknown number, no message, just a file labeled, "You need to see this." Vincent almost deleted it, probably spam. Then he pressed play. 26 seconds that made his blood turn to ice. By 6:20, he was pulling up to Dante's brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, the one that didn't appear on any property records, the one with window boxes full of herbs and a basketball hoop in the driveway, the house that looked like it belonged to any other working family. Maria, Dante's housekeeper, opened the door with a knowing look. He's having breakfast. Dante sat at the kitchen table in a gray Henley and reading glasses, newspapers spread before him, an espresso cooling at his elbow. At 47, he still had the build of the construction foreman he'd been 20 years ago. Broad shoulders, scarred knuckles, the kind of presence that filled a room without trying. He looked up. Vincent, 6:30 in the morning. This better be important. Vincent set his phone on the table, screen facing Dante. Sir, he said quietly, it's about Scarlett. Dante's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, something cold and ancient and absolutely still. He picked up the phone, pressed play, and the city held its breath. The kitchen was silent except for the ticking of the wall clock and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Dante watched the video once, then twice. Then a third time, his expression was carved from stone. 26 seconds. Scarlett's face when the liquid hit. The way she froze. The laughter echoing off marble walls. Brooks's phone raised high, capturing every angle. The crowd watching. The manager grabbing her arm like she was the problem. Vance Sterling's smirk as he sat back down. Dante set the phone on the table with surgical precision. His hand didn't shake, his jaw didn't clench. To anyone watching, he might have just reviewed weather reports, but Vincent had known Dante long enough to recognize the stillness. It was the stillness before demolition. When? Dante's voice was quiet, conversational. Last night. The Grand Regency Spring Gala. She didn't tell me. It wasn't a question. Vincent said nothing. Dante removed his reading glasses, folded them carefully, and looked up. His eyes were the color of winter ocean, gray, flat, utterly calm. Tell me about the Sterling and Carter families. Vincent pulled out his tablet, already prepared. Vance Sterling and Brooks Carter, both 26. Trust fund heirs celebrating a merger between Sterling Commercial Properties and Carter Development Group. Combined, they're worth approximately $4.2 billion. 43 active projects across the tri-state area, hotels, luxury condos, mixed-use developments. Who supplies them? For steel? Eastman Industrial. Concrete comes through Triborough Cement. Their primary contractor is Apex Construction Group. Dante's expression didn't change. But anyone who knew the city's infrastructure would have understood what Vincent didn't need to say. Eastman Industrial? The CEO owed Dante's union a favor from a strike he'd helped resolve. Triborough Cement? Dante's shell companies held 38% of their vendor contracts. Apex Construction Group? Their foreman was Dante's cousin. Permits? Dante asked. Department of Buildings. Their projects are expedited through the mayor's Commercial Development Initiative. Who chairs that initiative? Commissioner Patricia Delgado. Dante was silent for a moment. Patricia Delgado, whose husband's construction supply business would have gone bankrupt 5 years ago without Dante's intervention. Investors? Primary backing from Whitmore Capital and Sandstone Equity. Both firms have public profiles, clean reputations, old money, political connections. Find the debt. Dante stood, carrying his espresso to the window. Dawn light caught the tattoos on his forearms, intricate patterns that disappeared beneath his sleeves. Every loan, every line of credit, every dollar they owe. I want to know which banks hold their paper, which firms could bundle it, which shell companies could acquire it quietly. Vincent typed rapidly. Time frame? By tonight. And after that, Dante watched the sunrise paint Brooklyn gold and crimson. Somewhere across the river, Scarlett was probably sleeping, exhausted, humiliated, believing she had to suffer in silence because people like the Sterlings and Carters were untouchable. She was wrong. They weren't untouchable. They'd just never met anyone willing to reach. After that, Dante said softly, we teach them what happens when you disrespect the wrong woman. He turned back to Vincent, and his smile was the kind that didn't reach his eyes. Call everyone. I want a full brief by noon. Every supplier, every contractor, every permit application, Every union contract tied to Sterling Carter projects. And Vincent? Sir? Make sure nobody knows we're looking. Vincent nodded and left. Alone in the kitchen, Dante picked up his phone and opened his text thread with Scarlett. Her last message, "Fine. Home by midnight. Love you." He typed, "Sleep well, amore. See you tonight." Then he opened his contacts and began making calls. The sun rose over New York City, oblivious. But in boardrooms and construction sites, in union halls and permit offices, the machinery of Dante Valenti's empire was already starting to move. Silent, invisible, unstoppable. The first cracks appeared so subtly that nobody connected them. At the Sterling Tower construction site in Midtown, the morning concrete delivery never arrived. The dispatcher apologized profusely. Truck breakdowns, driver shortage, completely unprecedented. They'd reschedule for Wednesday. By Tuesday, the steel beams for Carter Development's Hudson Yards project were stuck in a New Jersey warehouse. Shipping manifest errors, computer glitches. The logistics company promised a resolution by the end of week. On Wednesday, the union electricians at the Sterling Carter luxury condos in Tribeca called in sick. All of them. Some kind of flu going around. Project managers made frustrated calls. Timelines shifted. Deadlines slipped. Nobody panicked yet. These things happened in construction. Vance Sterling's father issued a statement through the family's PR firm. Recent social media allegations regarding an incident at the Grand Regency Gala are false and defamatory. Our son was verbally provoked by an aggressive staff member whose unprofessional conduct disrupted a private celebration. The Sterling family expects better training and accountability from luxury hospitality venues. The statement went viral by noon. #spoiled rich kid trended on Twitter, but so did #lying waitress. Scarlett saw it during her lunch break, standing outside a different hotel where she'd picked up an extra shift. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through comments calling her a liar, a gold digger, an attention seeker. She deleted the app and went back to work. Dante read the press release in his office, a modest space in a Brooklyn warehouse that didn't advertise his name anywhere. Vincent stood nearby, waiting. They blamed her. Dante's voice was Arctic wind. Publicly. "Yes, sir." Dante was silent for exactly 10 seconds. Then, "Call Eastman Industrial. Tell them there's an environmental audit on their permits. Nothing moves until it clears." "How long?" "Indefinitely." "Triboro cement?" "Equipment inspections. OSHA found violations, shut down their mixing facility until further notice." "The union?" "Every Sterling Carter site. Work slowdowns, safety concerns. By the book, but permanent." Vincent typed rapidly. "They'll notice the pattern." "Let them notice." Dante stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "And Vincent, find out who wrote that press release. I want their client list, their reputation, their credibility. And then? Then we make sure nobody believes another word they say." Dante walked to the window overlooking the Brooklyn waterfront, the docks he controlled, the warehouses he owned, the supply chains he commanded with a phone call. "They called my wife a liar in front of the entire city," he said quietly. "So now they learn what happens when you make an enemy you can't see, can't threaten, and can't buy." He checked his watch. "By Friday, I want the Sterlings and Carters asking questions they won't like the answers to." Outside, the city hummed. Unaware that in boardrooms and construction trailers across Manhattan, an invisible hand had just tightened into a fist. Richard Sterling's phone rang at 8:47 a.m. Whitmore Capital, his largest investor. "Richard, we need to talk about the Hudson Yards timeline. Our analysts are seeing significant delays across your portfolio. What's happening?" By 10:15, Thomas Carter received similar calls. Sandstone Equity, then Morrison Webb Holdings, then 3 regional banks holding their commercial paper. Same questions. Same concerns. Why are 6 projects behind schedule simultaneously? Why are permits frozen on the Tribeca development? Why did the Department of Buildings flag structural compliance issues on Sterling Tower? Richard and Thomas conferenced at noon, their lawyers on speaker. This isn't coincidence, Richard said, loosening his tie. Concrete delays, steel shortages, union slowdowns, permit freezes, all at once? Someone's targeting us. Who? Thomas demanded. We don't have enemies like this. Their lawyers had no answers. Their project managers blamed supply chain chaos. Their accountants promised the numbers still worked. But in the corner offices of Sterling Commercial Properties and Carter Development Group, expensive furniture couldn't hide the smell of smoke. Vance Sterling posted an Instagram story from a Hamptons beach house. Champagne bottles, a sunset, Brooks making devil horns at the camera. Caption, consequence-free living. 3,000 likes in an hour. Brooks added a video of them jet skiing, laughing, spraying water at the camera. Neither checked their father's increasingly frantic voicemails. Neither noticed the Wall Street Journal reporter who'd started asking questions about the gala incident. Neither saw the anonymous email sent to 17 major investors, containing construction audit reports, permit violation notices, and a detailed timeline of every Sterling Carter project delay. They were 26, rich, and convinced the world bent around them. Richard Sterling arrived at the Department of Buildings at 7:00 a.m., demanding to speak with Commissioner Delgado. Her assistant smiled apologetically. The commissioner is unavailable. Unavailable? I've known Patricia for 15 years. Sir, I'm sorry. She's dealing with a compliance review. All expedited permits have been suspended pending investigation. Investigation into what? I'm not at liberty to say. Richard left 23 voicemails. Patricia Delgado never called back. By Tuesday, the panic was no longer quiet, and in Brooklyn, Dante Valenti checked his watch and made another call. The timetable was ahead of schedule. The first transaction happened so quietly that Richard Sterling's CFO almost missed it. A routine report. Whitmore Capital had sold a portion of their Sterling Carter debt portfolio to a firm called Meridian Holdings, LLC. Who's Meridian? Richard asked. His CFO shrugged. Probably a private equity fund. Happens all the time. By Thursday afternoon, Sandstone Equity had sold to Apex Ventures Group. By Friday morning, Morrison Webb sold to Triborough Capital Partners. 3 different firms. 3 separate transactions. All perfectly legal. Richard's lawyers reviewed the paperwork. Clean, professional. Nothing unusual except the speed. What they didn't see, what they couldn't see without digging through 12 layers of shell companies, offshore accounts, and corporate veils, was that Meridian, Apex, and Triborough all traced back to the same silent partner, a man who'd spent 20 years building an empire designed to be invisible. Thomas Carter's head of finance knocked on his home office door at 9:00 a.m., face pale. We have a problem. She laid out 3 reports. Meridian Holdings, 30% of Sterling Carter commercial debt. Apex Ventures, 18% of their construction loans. Triborough Capital, 22% of their revolving credit lines. Combined? Thomas asked. Someone now controls approximately 47% of your leveraged assets. The room went cold. Who? We can't trace it. The ownership structures are sophisticated. Richard arrived 30 minutes later. They sat in Thomas's office, staring at the same numbers. This isn't Wall Street, Richard said quietly. This is personal. The waitress? Thomas asked. You think this is about the waitress? I think this started exactly when Vance poured that drink. They called their sons. Vance answered from a yacht off Miami. Dad, seriously? We're celebrating Get home, now. It's just some girl who... Vance! Richard's voice could have frozen fire. Someone just bought half our company out from under us, and I think you know why. Get home, now. Richard's private line rang at 7:43 p.m. Unknown number. Mr. Sterling. The voice was calm, unhurried, with the faint trace of an Italian accent. My name is Dante Valenti. I believe we should meet. Who? Your debt is now my debt. Your projects are now my concern. And your son humiliated my wife. Silence. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office. The address will be texted to you. Now wait, Mr. Sterling, you're not negotiating. You're listening. Tomorrow at 10. The line went dead. Richard sat in his study, hands shaking. Thomas arrived 20 minutes later. Neither man slept that night. The Sterling Commercial Properties boardroom filled before sunrise. 12 board members, 8 lawyers, the CFO with folders thick enough to use as weapons. Richard stood at the head of the table, looking like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Gentlemen, we have a situation. He clicked through slides. Debt acquisitions, permit freezes, construction delays, project hemorrhaging, the shell companies that now controlled their financial oxygen. Who is Dante Valenti? A board member demanded. Construction, logistics, the man who apparently controls half the supply chain in New York. So buy him out. Negotiate. Richard's laugh was hollow. With what? He owns our debt. He controls our permits. Our projects are dead in the water, and our credit lines are in his hands. Across town, the Carter Development Group Board was having an identical conversation. By 8 o'clock a.m., both families knew the truth. They were no longer in control of their own empires. The Wall Street Journal broke first. Sterling Carter Empire faces financial crisis amid construction scandals, then the New York Times. Luxury developers' projects stalled, permit violations and debt concerns. By 9:15, Bloomberg had obtained internal documents, safety violations, environmental complaints, labor disputes, all suddenly public, all catastrophically timed. Richard's phone exploded with calls. Investors, partners, journalists, the stock prices of their publicly traded subsidiaries plummeted. Vance and Brooks sat in Richard Sterling's home office, flanked by their fathers, their families' lawyers, and the ruins of their carefully constructed lives. Do you understand what you've done? Richard's voice shook, not with anger, with something worse, fear. Dad, it was just what? Thomas Carter stood, slamming his hand on the desk. Just a joke? Just a waitress? That waitress is married to the man who now controls $4.2 billion in our assets. Vance went pale. That's not possible. Her husband is Dante Valenti. Richard pulled up a photo on his tablet. A man in a tailored suit, dark hair graying at the temples, eyes like winter. He controls construction unions, cement suppliers, steel shipments, building permits. He has the power to finish or destroy every project we've ever started. Brooks stared at the photo. The construction worker? He's not a construction worker, one of the lawyers said quietly. He's the man who decides whether construction happens. Because you poured soda on his wife, Richard continued, each word landing like a hammer. We've lost investor confidence. Our permits are frozen. Our projects are collapsing, and our debt is owned by a man who has every reason to destroy us. Vance's hands trembled. We'll apologize. You'll do exactly what he tells you to do. Thomas's voice was ice. Because in 20 minutes, we're walking into his office, and we're going to beg him not to dismantle everything our families have built for 3 generations. The room was silent, except for the ticking of an antique clock. Get in the car, Richard said. Both of you. And pray he's feeling merciful. Vance and Brooks stood on shaking legs. For the first time in their privileged lives, they understood what it meant to face consequences. 3 black cars wound through morning traffic toward an address in Brooklyn that wasn't on any corporate registry. In the lead car, Richard Sterling stared out the window at the city his family had helped build and wondered if, by sunset, any of it would still be theirs. The address led to a warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn. No corporate signage, no marble lobby, just a steel door with an intercom and a security camera that tracked their arrival. Vincent Rossi met them at the entrance, 40-something, quiet, the kind of man who looked like he'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it. This way. He led them through a warehouse floor, organized, efficient, workers moving supplies with the precision of a military operation. Then up a staircase to a second-floor office with windows overlooking the Brooklyn waterfront. Dante Valenti stood with his back to them, watching container ships navigate the harbor. He wore a charcoal suit, perfectly tailored. No jewelry except a wedding band. His presence filled the room without effort. He didn't turn around. Sit. It wasn't a request. Richard, Thomas, Vance, and Brooks sat in chairs arranged before a simple desk. Their lawyers stood behind them, briefcases clutched like shields. Dante turned slowly, his gray eyes sweeping across them with the clinical assessment of a surgeon deciding where to cut. He looked at Vance first, then Brooks. 26 seconds, Dante said quietly. That's how long the video was. My wife, humiliated in front of 300 people, and you laughed. Vance opened his mouth. Don't. Dante's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You don't speak unless I ask you a question. He sat behind the desk, unhurried, and folded his hands. Your families are facing complete financial collapse. Your projects are dead. Your investors are fleeing. Your permits will never clear. Your debt, which I now control, is being called due in 30 days. Thomas cleared his throat. Mr. Valenti, we're prepared to negotiate. You're not negotiating. Dante's smile was winter. You're accepting terms. He slid a folder across the desk. Richard opened it with trembling hands. Vincent stood in the corner, silent, watching. You will issue a public, televised apology, Dante began. Not a corporate statement. You, all four of you, will appear on camera and apologize to Scarlett Thorne by name. You will admit what you did. You will take responsibility. No excuses. No justifications. Vance's face went red. You can't make us... Dante's gaze cut to him like a blade. I can destroy everything your families have built in 3 generations before lunch. Yes, I can make you. Silence. Second, you will establish a $50 million fund for abused and exploited hospitality workers. Real money. Real oversight. Anonymous board members of my choosing. Thomas nodded slowly, calculating losses. Third, Sterling Commercial Properties and Carter Development Group will transfer 20% ownership to a holding company. Non-voting shares, but with full financial rights. You'll rebuild. But you'll do it knowing I own a piece of everything you earn. Richard's hand shook as he read the contract. And fourth, Dante leaned forward, his voice dropping to something quiet and absolute. Vance Sterling and Brooks Carter will resign from all public-facing roles. No board seats, no press appearances, no social media. You will disappear from public life for no less than 5 years. You want to rebuild your family's reputations? You'll do it from the shadows. Brooks made a strangled sound. 5 years? Would you prefer 10? Dante asked. I can arrange that too. Along with every construction project in the tri-state area blacklisting your family's name. The lawyers whispered frantically. Richard and Thomas looked at the numbers, at the clauses, at the iron reality of a contract designed not for negotiation, but for surrender. If we refuse? Richard asked, though his voice said he already knew. Then by Wednesday, you'll be bankrupt. By Friday, federal investigators will receive anonymous tips about irregularities in your permit applications. By next month, you won't own enough to afford this conversation. Dante stood. You have 60 seconds to decide. The room was silent except for the distant sound of cargo being loaded. Richard looked at his son, at the young man whose cruelty had cost them everything. Then he picked up the pen. Where do I sign? One by one they signed. Vance's hand shook so badly he could barely write his name. When the last signature was inked, Dante collected the contracts and handed them to Vincent. The apology will air Friday at 8 p.m. on every major network. My people will handle the arrangements. He walked to the door, then paused. Gentlemen, you're free to go. Build your empires back if you can. Just remember, his eyes found Vance and Brooks one final time. The next time you think about humiliating someone you consider beneath you, remember the day you learned you were never as powerful as you believed. The door closed behind him. The Sterling and Carter families sat in silence, surrounded by the ruins of their arrogance. Outside, Brooklyn hummed with the sound of construction. And Dante Valenti made a call to ensure Scarlett's next shift included a raise she'd never questioned. Scarlett was folding laundry in their Brooklyn apartment when Dante called from the living room. Amore, come watch this. She walked in, dish towel still in hand, to find him on the couch, remote pointed at the television. What is it? Just watch. The screen showed a press conference setup. Stark, professional, uncomfortable. 4 men sat behind a table bearing microphones. Richard Sterling, Thomas Carter, and their sons. Scarlett's breath caught. Dante, I don't want to. Please. His voice was gentle. Trust me. She sat slowly, her heart hammering. Richard Sterling spoke first, his voice stripped of its usual corporate confidence. My name is Richard Sterling. 2 weeks ago, at the Grand Regency Spring Gala, my son Vance committed an act of cruelty against a hospitality worker named Scarlett Thorne. The camera cut to Vance, pale and hollow-eyed. Along with Brooks Carter, Richard continued, he humiliated her publicly, pouring soda on her while guests watched and filmed. What we initially dismissed as boys being boys was actually an act of profound disrespect and abuse. Scarlett's hand went to her mouth. Thomas Carter spoke next. Our families issued a statement blaming Ms. Thorne. That statement was false, cowardly, and designed to protect our sons from consequences they absolutely deserved. Brooks stared at the table, unable to meet the cameras. Then Vance leaned forward, reading from notes with shaking hands. Scarlett Thorne, I'm sorry. I was drunk, entitled, and cruel. I treated you like you were invisible because I thought I was untouchable. I was wrong. What I did was unforgivable, and I hope you can find peace knowing that I've faced consequences I'll carry for the rest of my life. Brooks followed, voice barely audible. I recorded it. I laughed. I enabled it. Ms. Thorne, I'm deeply sorry. Richard spoke again. Effective immediately, the Sterling and Carter families are establishing a $50 million fund for hospitality workers who have faced abuse, harassment, and exploitation. We cannot undo what was done, but we can ensure others are protected going forward. The press conference ended. Scarlett sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. They apologized, she whispered. They actually apologized. Dante put his arm around her, pulling her close. Justice sometimes finds its way. But how? People like that don't apologize. They don't face consequences. How did this happen? Dante kissed her forehead, his expression unreadable. Maybe someone finally held them accountable. Maybe the world got tired of watching powerful people escape consequences. Scarlett buried her face in his shoulder, crying. Not from pain this time, but from something like relief, like vindication, like the universe had, for once, bent toward fairness. I thought I'd just have to forget it happened, she said. I thought I had to stay quiet and take it because fighting back would cost me everything. You never have to stay quiet, Dante said softly. Not with me. Never with me. She looked up at him, this man she'd married 6 years ago, the construction foreman she'd met at a diner, who still kissed her goodbye every morning, who remembered her coffee order, who made her feel protected without ever making her feel small. I love you, she said. I love you more, Amor. What Scarlett didn't know, what she would never know, was that the man holding her had dismantled 2 family empires in less than 2 weeks using nothing but silent precision and invisible power. She didn't know about the shell companies, the debt acquisitions, the permits frozen at his command. She didn't know about the meeting in Brooklyn, the contract signed with trembling hands, the terror in Vance Sterling's eyes. And Dante would never tell her, because his power wasn't something he needed to announce. It was something he wielded in silence, in shadows, in the invisible architecture of a city that ran on his decisions. The Sterling and Carter families rebuilt slowly, carefully, under the watchful eye of a man they would never cross again. Vance and Brooks disappeared from public life. No Instagram, no galas, no champagne-soaked yachts. They worked in their families' companies, quietly, humbly, learning for the first time what it meant to earn rather than inherit respect. Scarlett got promoted to event coordinator at a different hotel, one where the management treated workers like humans. And every night, she came home to Brooklyn, to the brownstone with flower boxes and a basketball hoop, where Dante was waiting with dinner and a smile. "How was work?" he'd ask. "Good," she'd say. "Really good." And he'd kiss her, knowing that the world she moved through was safer because he'd made it so. Not with bullets or threats, but with power so complete, so invisible, that his enemies never saw him coming until they were already defeated. In the quiet of their kitchen, with the city glowing beyond the windows, Dante Valenti held his wife and felt something close to peace. Because justice, when done right, didn't need witnesses, it only needed results.